This man has an 8 to 10 year history of killing women all across the country.
An employee coming in just after 8 this morning made the horrible discovery. 4 employees of the Malibu Grand Prix stabbed to death.
She doesn't dispute that she stabbed her husband a staggering 193 times.
Harris's 16-year-old daughter witnessed her stepmother run the wheels of her Mercedes over her dad several times.
Police say the suspect may be responsible for the murders of at least 6 women.
Welcome back to another season of The Evidence Room. This is our 3rd season, and we do have a big season planned for you. We have 8 new episodes. If you're just joining us, this is where we take you deep into the Harris County archives and examine the pieces of evidence that are part of some of the most notorious crimes in our area. We do try to focus on crimes that have had a lasting impact on our area, those crimes that actually led to changes in the law or advanced victims' rights. You can get caught up on seasons 1 and 2 of The Evidence Room. Right now, it's streaming on the KPRC 2 Plus app. As for this season, our first episode is about the Malibu Grand Prix murders. This year actually marks the 40th anniversary of these murders, and this is an episode that I really wanted to do because I remember as a young boy when these murders happened, and I'll explain. In 1983, I was 12 years old. My parents had just moved to Houston the year before, and Malibu Grand Prix was just about one of the coolest things that I had ever seen. I moved here from Biloxi, Mississippi, didn't really have anything like this. It wasn't just that they were go-karts. They were shaped like Formula One race cars, and the track was long. It had a ton of turns and curves. It wasn't just some oval that you went round and round. They even gave you like this mock license. So for a 12-year-old, that was just the coolest thing ever. And then inside the Malibu Grand Prix, every video game known to man. I mean it, if my parents had let me, I would have lived there. Then, all of a sudden, in July of 1983, I remember my parents turning on the news.
An employee coming in just after 8 this morning made the horrible discovery. 4 employees of the Malibu Grand Prix stabbed to death.
We believe they were killed sometime shortly after midnight last night. We, of course, cannot put an exact time on these deaths. They all died of probably multiple stab wounds. It's probably the motive, we think, apparently is a robbery.
The bodies were found at the back end of the arcade area. 3 were in the restroom, a 3-stall restroom, and as one investigator said, there's blood everywhere. The 4th body was found in the manager's office, face down on the floor.
4 people were murdered inside the Malibu Grand Prix off of Highway 59 near West Park. Neil Varahis, Roddy Harris, and brothers Arnold and Yoreen Pequeño. These were particularly savage murders. And so joining us today is veteran police officer J.C. Mosier. You were with HPD for 24 years, now with the Precinct 1 Constable's Office for 31 years. And at the time these murders happened, you were a homicide detective.
Yes.
You were called to the scene. Tell us what it was like when you walked inside this Malibu Grand Prix.
Actually, I was asked by our captain to go out to handle the media. I knew there'd be a lot of media folk out there, and said go out there and Mosier and keep the media off the guys inside and let them do what they've got to do first, you know. Which I did a lot back then. And so I went out there, and I have to tell you, it was probably the bloodiest murder in the history of this city. They were taken into a large bathroom there, and it probably had all their throats cut or stabbed and this and that, but there was literally, and it was a large bathroom, and there was probably that much blood deep in there.
Wow.
They were completely, I'm sure, drained of any blood they had left in them, but I'd never seen anything like it. We had detectives with stuff wrapped around their shoes so they could actually get in there and do what they had to do. And there was like waiting in a water, literally waiting in a water pool or something. I mean, but it was blood. And I just have never seen anything like that in all those years.
Detectives were careful about what they said.
We're not trying to keep anything secret. What we're trying to do is we don't want to give out all the information, hoping that sometime later that we will catch the individuals responsible for that.
Fellow workers were shocked when they learned of the murders.
There's money, but we only have money in one location, and it's pretty secure, okay? Really, somebody would really have to be sick to do something like this for the amount.
The manager identified the 4 victims as his night shift supervisor, Arinel Vargas, 2 brothers, Joe and Arnold Pequeño, and Rod Harris. The safe door was open and several $1,000s appear to be missing, leading detectives to believe the 4 were killed because they were witnesses to the robbery. It took 6 hours before the bodies were actually removed from the arcade room. Detectives say they'll spend the rest of the evening looking for some clue to the killers. Jack Cato, Channel 2 News.
We call it the evidence room, but it's the Harris County Archive of Criminal Exhibits. One of the things we saw in there looked like a basic kitchen knife with the tip broken off. Were they all stabbed?
Yeah, they were. As I remember, they were all stabbed or throats cut or whatever.
Okay. Something else that's also still in evidence, and it's something I'd never really seen before, or really, I guess, since, because this was 1983, is there's this huge mannequin in there, and it's got red marks on it, which I'm assuming indicate where the stab wounds are. One of the shirts from the employees is also in there.
Wow.
And I mean, the savagery that went into these murders was just incredible.
Yeah.
Medical examiner Dr. Joe Jahemchek said it was hard to determine the cause of death just looking at the 4 victims, but they've been stabbed numerous times, and 2 had apparent slashed throats. But when he completed an autopsy, he'd have more answers.
It was unbelievable. When you work in the homicide division as a detective for any amount of time, you pretty much get to where, okay, here's another one. You know, it's just, you have to sort of protect yourself, and you mentally protect yourself from what you're seeing all the time. But I'll never forget that one as long as I live.
So how were they found? Were these night shift employees, day shift?
Day shift people came in. They were night shift employees. When the day shift people came in, I think a manager and maybe another employee came in and found them and were called. And then, bingo, we were called to get out there, you know.
Teams of detectives spent all morning trying to find some clue. Half a dozen lab people searched every part of the arcade. In fact, even outside on the sidewalk, they scraped up tracings of what are believed to be blood left behind by the killers. As employees started to come to work this morning, they were shocked at what happened. One, the manager, told about it.
Well, they were young, aggressive, energetic, beautiful kids, beautiful people.
How long did it take to start developing suspects?
Well, oddly enough, this is one of the most amazing things that probably ever happened to me in the homicide division. I left the scene after I did my job with the media and got everybody what they needed, and they were happy with what they were getting and everything. And I headed back to the homicide office. I walked in the front door of the homicide office, and the girl at the desk there said, "Mosier, line 3. That means I've got a phone call on line 3. Mm-hmm. So I go over and pick up the phone and said, as I normally would, "Detective Mosier, can I help you?" And she said, "Yes, is this the Detective Mosier?" A woman. She said, "Is this the Detective Mosier that I just saw out at the Malibu Grand Prix on TV?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am, it is." And she said, "I think my son killed those people." And I did just what you did. I said, "Ma'am, are you sure?" And then she began to tell me, yes, because they used to work there. He got fired, and he's been mad at them forever. And if anybody, and they were gone last night from the house. I came home, and my little niece or whatever said, "Oh yeah, they came back and they had a bunch of money and had blood on it." And there we go. And that's what started it right there.
How long do you remember talking with her?
10 minutes or so. Again, it wasn't my case. I just mainly took her to the detectives that were working the case. because they have the information that I don't have. You know, they'd have a lot more information already than I wouldn't have. So I got her straight in with them, and from there on, it just, there it went.
That must take a tremendous amount of courage for a mother to call.
Oh, I can't imagine. I can't imagine. I've asked myself 100 times in my life since then, could I have done that for my son? Basically, going to get her kid put in prison at the least forever, and a powerful woman, maybe the most powerful woman I've ever talked to in my life.
You also have to know it's a death penalty eligible case.
Yeah, it's a death penalty offense, no question about it.
Can you also remember a time when a crime like this actually kind of came together that quickly?
No, absolutely not. I mean, everybody in the office just couldn't believe it when I walked back there and told them, this case is cleared, buddies. And they were all, half of them still out there. They hadn't even got in yet, most of them. I never had anything like that happen that quickly, and I've never had a mother call me and say, I think my son killed those people.
Less than 12 hours after the grisly murders were discovered at the Malibu racetrack, police had identified 3 suspects, one of them a former employee of the business. 2 of the suspects were arrested last night in southeast Houston. They have been identified as 19-year-old Richard James Wilkerson, who was fired from the Malibu park 2 weeks ago. His cousin, 16-year-old James Edward Randall. Prosecutors will try to have Randall certified as an adult. Both have been charged with capital murder. A third suspect, 20-year-old Kenneth Ray Ransom, is still at large. The 4 employees murdered at the amusement center have been identified as 18-year-old Anil Varugesi, who was the night manager on duty Thursday night. 22-year-old Roddy Harris, a Houston Baptist University student who was working only his second night at the track. And 2 young brothers, Joreen and Arnold Pequeño. All the victims died from numerous stab wounds. A dozen detectives have been assigned to the case. They have concluded that robbery was the only motive for the killings.
I do not want to get into the details of why the individuals were killed. The only thing I'm saying is that robbery is the motive. I said, to be a grudge against the business, no, I don't believe it. That there was any known grudge.
Less than $2,000 was taken in the robbery. Detective Ladd also noted that Wilkerson, the fired employee, apparently knew his victims. Tonight, the Malibu Grand Prix on the Southwest Freeway has reopened. The race cars and the video games are running again, this time under tighter security. Charles Hadlock, Channel 2 News.
So after the call from the mom, court documents show that Richard Wilkerson, who was her nephew, James Randall, who was her son, 16-year-old, and Kenneth Ransom were arrested. And what I read was Wilkerson had worked at Malibu, got fired a couple weeks prior, and then was just sitting around with the other 2 saying, hey, I need some money. They said, yeah, I need some money. He goes, well, I know they've got money in the safe at this place, and he used the pretense of getting his last paycheck to let him in as they were closing up the business.
Police say Wilkerson, Randall, and Ransom planned the murders in advance. They wanted to rob the Malibu cash box and didn't want to leave any witnesses.
They told us the facts of what happened from the time they first decided to do it, but they show no remorse.
Up to 12 detectives are now working on the case. They've spent the last few days running down phone tips and searching homes and apartments where Ransom has been spotted. They think he is back in Houston now and that it is only a matter of time before he's caught. Phil Archer, Channel 2 News.
Do you think they ever had any intention of leaving them alive?
No, I think they went there to kill those folks. They knew they were going to have to do that because they were all buddies of theirs and they'd worked with them. I mean,
no witnesses.
I mean, so it's really no witnesses on this deal. Can't be. I'm sure they talked about that.
So it looks like Wilkerson gave a confession, and one of the things in that confession that really jumped out at me was Wilkerson said the manager, Anil, had said, "Yeah, I'll put in a good word for you to try and get your job back." when they were there to do what they do. And then there was one portion of the confession that I found particularly chilling. And matter of fact, I'm going to read it to you. It's where Wilkerson basically said he walked Anil into the office where the safe was, while the other two took the other three into the bathroom. And Anil didn't know that they were
he didn't know they were doing that.
They were being killed at that time. And then when he walked him in, he looked at him, and then this is directly from his confession. When I shut the door, Anil looked at me and said no. Then I just started stabbing him.
Mm-hmm.
That's about as cold-blooded as I think it gets.
Yeah.
After 5 days on the run, Ransom gave himself up this morning. He walked into police headquarters around 9 o'clock. His attorney says Ransom's mother convinced him to give up.
He just naturally was afraid, just natural panic and afraid that he didn't know what was going to happen. That's all.
He was afraid of the police?
Yes.
The victims died of multiple stab wounds. 3 had their throats slashed. One officer said it looked like a slaughterhouse. And so far, no one has been able to explain why the murders were so brutal.
I can't imagine, well, there were a lot of terrible cases that history of the Homicide Division and HPD, but this one had so many strange things about it, and it absolutely was just, you would think they were just killing animals or something. I mean, it didn't mean anything to them that these were their buddies, they knew them, they worked with them, these were human beings. They just, it was awful. I mean, it was awful. I mean, you couldn't do that to an animal. I mean, and I'd never seen anything like it. And that and just the total amount of blood in one particular scene. It's the most gruesome murder that I have any knowledge of for the city of Houston. I mean, it's just, it's amazing.
I think I read that it was less than $2,000 or right about $2,000 that was taken out of the safe?
Yeah, I do remember later it was thinking, what the heck, how much do they get to do this? What did you, in 2,000, 2,500, something like that, I think. But I remember, but unbelievable.
Giroux says Ransom will plead not guilty, but 2 other suspects in the case have already confessed. One of them, James Wilkerson, told a judge this morning that he couldn't afford an attorney. Police say Wilkerson told them how he and the others planned the murders, how they separated the victims to make killing them easier. Wilkerson's 16-year-old cousin, James Randall, was also in court today at the County Juvenile Detention Center. Authorities will not comment on what happened there. All 3 are accused of murdering 4 Malibu Raceway employees last Friday during a robbery. The men were allegedly killed, so there would be no witnesses.
When Wilkerson was giving his confession, it did not appear from what he said that he was angry over getting fired. It's just, he needed money and he knew that there was money there. It wasn't really any kind of animosity towards anyone.
Yeah, I don't think there was either, but I think the whole thing was about money, and it was just, why they decided that they were going to have to kill all these people. Well, they knew them, and obviously they couldn't do this and get away with it without them being dead. But the way it was done was just it was just inhuman. It was the most horrible thing in the world to see out there.
Well, when we look back at some of the footage, the crime scene video and everything that's still in evidence, it looked like a massive effort to collect evidence and catalog the scene as is needed in homicide.
Yeah, and we had people from our identification division who at those days collected evidence for us when we needed it done. They're experts at it. And they were out there. I mean, it took a lot of people to come out there and try to put this thing together.
Well, it seems like they left a trail, because when you look at some of the crime scene photos that are still in the archive, it looks like you found the knife in a field next to the Malibu Grand Prix, and it kind of kept going to the apartments that were behind it and found like jeans in the dumpster, there were shoes. They just kind of discarded, I guess, whatever they thought that had blood on it would be incriminating.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but that's great if you know who killed them. But if you've got bloody jeans and clothes and all that stuff, we could have them in our storerooms forever because we don't know who they belong to. And the whole time I was there, I was thinking, oh my God, these poor guys that are going to be assigned this case, they're going to have some work to do. You know, they really are.
And they even called for a ride and admitted to the person, hey, I just, killed somebody. What is it? Okay, you've been a homicide detective, and I know even though specifically, but what is it with that compulsion for somebody to commit something this horrible to blab about it?
I don't know, but thank God they do. Even after we found out from the mother as quickly as we did, that's when they had to go to work there, because they had to then put everything in here, try to get somebody to talk to that would prove everything up and do that. They did the hard work on it.
I don't think people realize that. Talk about that a little bit. Okay, so you have the mom say, my son, my nephew, there's bloody money, all of that.
Yeah.
You had the person that gave him a ride saying, yeah, he was talking about they just killed somebody. But that's really only the beginning of the work that is needed to secure convictions.
Oh, yeah.
After that, how difficult is it to start putting all that together, especially when you have that many victims and that many suspects?
Yeah. Well, and again, I wasn't involved in that part of the case, so I don't really know. But the next thing you have to do is try to interview arrest and interview anybody involved or at all in this thing, and see if they'll talk to you, and if you get a confession out of them, you have to, that sort of thing. But there was enough evidence, I think, to start with. And I'll tell you one thing, you don't have to wonder too much if they did it when one of them's mother calls the police and says, I think my son killed those people.
Wilkerson and Ransom both got the death penalty and both have since been executed. It was interesting though, both kind of were like, well, we didn't really do it. There was a statement to the effect of, I don't feel like I'm guilty of this. Wilkerson, who actually gave the confession, said it was twisted. That was interesting that he talked about it in such basic terms, but then of course when the execution comes around, he says it's twisted, it's not really, it really wasn't his fault.
Yeah, well, there are always excuses for most people who commit crimes. As soon as they commit a crime, they're probably thinking of an excuse for why they did it. And I don't know. I know the detectives spent a lot of time talking to them. They're in the office. And some were wavering and some were outright telling them what happened. But this was because of the phone call from mother. Right away, this case was, that case was broke right there.
Randall, though, is still in prison because he was 16 at the time, and the Supreme Court has ruled that even if it's a capital offense, you can't give the death penalty to anybody who was under the age of 18 at the time the crime was committed. So he's still in prison. And I guess the reason it stuck in my head is, as a 12-year-old, I'm like, wait a minute, things like that aren't supposed to happen at places that are fun. What impact did this have on the city in 1983? Because this literally was an entertainment center.
I tell you, it was probably one of the most talked about murders, perhaps in this, not perhaps, but in the history of the city, because of the way they were killed and how it happened, and there was just, everybody was kind of going, why is this happening? If you're going to rob a place, go rob it. You don't have to slaughter everybody that's in there working when you do it, So it was something that none of us could really get out of our heads either,
As a homicide detective, do you feel that there's a certain amount of pressure when you have such a savage murder on your hands, that the way the city's going to view it, that there's an immense amount of pressure that, man, you better solve this and solve this one quickly?
The first thing is you better get it solved quick. And it would have been more difficult without the mother, obviously. There'd been a lot of work to do there, and then see if anybody else was willing to talk about any of these folks and who might have done this to them. And there probably were plenty of people who might have said, hey, I know who that is. Because they had friends, all of them had a lot of friends, and they had employees there. All the employees knew everybody, and so it would have happened, but not as quickly as it would have without the mother's call.
JC, thank you again for coming in. I really appreciate all the help with this, and it's always good to see you.
You're welcome. Great to be with you.
Thank you. Take care. All right. That's our episode for this week. We're back next Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. with an episode on the so-called blue-eyed butcher.
Jeffrey was nude. He had all of his clothes off. The evidence will show you that Susan Wright lit candles in the bedroom.
A love nest that turned into a torture chamber is how prosecutors describe Susan Wright's alleged plan to kill her husband to start a new life.
She stabbed her husband 193 times and then buried him in the backyard, but she's no longer in prison. You're going to hear from one of the attorneys who helped get her prison sentence reduced and why. Remember, new episodes of The Evidence Room stream every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. on KPRC 2+. Take care and have a good week.